And if what you most desire is also what you most fear to reveal, Joon knew this better than anyone. Behind his calm gaze and restrained gestures, there was a secret that burned in silence, a pleasure hidden in the edges of trust, in the details that turn a simple gesture into complete surrender. He believed no one would ever understand, that if he dared to show it, he would lose everything. But then Hana appeared. With her, every silence became a provocation, every glance stretched out like an unspoken invitation. She noticed his hesitations, his trembling, the way he looked away whenever something in him slipped, and instead of stepping back, she drew closer. Every gesture of hers seemed to challenge the mask he struggled to keep in place. And on an ordinary night, surrounded by the sound of rain against the windows, the veil began to fall. A touch that lingered longer than it should, a gaze that didn't flee, and something that shone in Hana's eyes. Not fear, not judgment, but curiosity. It was only a matter of time before she discovered the velvet restraints Joon kept hidden, and had to decide whether she wanted to lose herself in them, or save herself from him. Because not every silence is empty. Some scream on the inside, begging to be heard. When desire dresses itself in trust, can it be love, or is it a prison? Night fell over the city like a heavy, gleaming silk veil. The streets reflected the lamplight in small pools of rain, and the wind carried a damp cold that seemed to seep through clothes and skin. Inside the municipal library, the silence had a different weight. It wasn't just the absence of voices, but a charged stillness that amplified every step, every breath, every turned page. Joon walked the narrow aisles, stacking books in his arms as if he were trying to hide behind them. His gaze was always lowered, like someone afraid of being seen. To an outside observer, he looked like any ordinary librarian, discreet, careful, always immersed in his work. But behind his contained gestures, there was something else, something that burned in silence. He took pleasure in details others wouldn't even notice. A longer breath, a touch that lasted beyond what was necessary, the restrained sound of someone's breath nearby. And beyond that, there was a hidden desire, surrender, not in explicit forms, but in symbols of trust, in silent yielding. In a secret drawer at the back of his room, he kept a pair of velvet handcuffs, never used with anyone. For him, they were just the physical portrait of what his mind created, a secret that imprisoned him more than it set him free. That night, fate chose not to spare him. She walked in as if unaware she would change everything. Hana, with her hair loose and still damp from the rain, a light coat dripping on the floor, and large glasses framing attentive eyes. It wasn't her first time in the library, but it was the first time Joon noticed her as if the whole world had stopped. The sound of her shoes echoed on the wooden floor, and Joon felt his heart race almost painfully. He pretended to focus on the books, but every movement she made seemed to pull his eyes. When she chose a nearby table, next to a window fogged by the rain, he knew the night wouldn't be like the others. Hana opened a notebook, scattered pens, and began to write. From a distance, Joon watched. The way she bit the cap of her pen when she was thinking, the distracted way she adjusted her glasses, pressing them against her nose with her fingertips, the soft sigh that escaped whenever she reread a sentence, details that would be invisible to anyone else. To him, they were an invitation. At one point, she dropped her pen. The dull sound echoed through the quiet room and rolled to a stop near his feet. Joon quickly bent to pick it up, but at the same moment Hana leaned down too. Their hands touched. It was only a second, a trivial touch. But to Joon, it was like lightning through his body. His skin burned, the air vanished, and he pulled back too quickly, handing over the pen as if it were dangerous. When he looked up, he met her eyes, and what he saw froze him. Hana wasn't just looking, she was studying him. A heavy silence fell between them. Joon's heart pounded. His throat was dry, as if he had been unmasked without saying a word. He looked away, but not before noticing a small smile on her lips. It wasn't mockery. It was something more enigmatic, as if to say, "I know you're hiding something." That night, when he got home, Joon couldn't sleep. The touch still burned on his skin. Her smile still throbbed in his mind. He opened the drawer where he kept the velvet cuffs, ran his fingers over the soft fabric, and shivered. For an instant, he imagined Hana's wrist inside that delicate loop. The thought made him slam the drawer shut, but it was already too late. The desire had woken up. The next morning, the library looked the same, but to Joon nothing was. He was restless, afraid and expectant at once, and when Hana's soft footsteps echoed down the aisle, he knew there was no escape. She came in earlier than usual, wearing a light coat, her loose hair carrying the scent of morning. She placed her notebooks on the same table as the day before, and this time didn't pretend he didn't exist. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm but charged with something Joon couldn't name. He swallowed. "Good morning." He tried to busy himself with books, but he felt her gaze like an invisible current pulling him in. At one point, as he passed nearby, she called him. "You always work so seriously," she said, smiling. "It's like you're afraid someone will see too much." Joon stopped, his fingers pressing hard on the book cover he held. "Maybe," he answered quietly, avoiding her eyes. Hana leaned forward, resting her chin on her hands. "What are you afraid of, Joon?" His name in her voice sounded different, intimate. His heart raced. "It's not fear," he murmured. "It's just hard to explain." She smiled but didn't press. She returned to writing, as if giving him time to think. Even so, the way her fingers slid slowly over the page felt crafted to provoke him. The game went on for hours, glances that crossed too quickly, silences that lasted longer than normal, small gestures that, to him, were tempests. Until, at closing time, when he was turning off the lights, he realized Hana was still there. She closed her notebook slowly, stood, and walked toward him. The sound of her steps echoed like a knock inside his chest. "It's late," he said, his voice lower than usual. "Late? For what?" she asked with a faint smile. Joon went still. The silence grew heavy. His heart sped up, and suddenly she stepped closer. "Are you afraid of me, Joon?" she asked, eyes fixed on him. He instinctively stepped back, only to find the wall behind him. His body tensed, his breath quickened. "It's not fear," he murmured, almost voiceless. Hana's gaze stayed firm, penetrating. Then, "Is it desire?" The words fell like a silent thunderclap. The world seemed to stop. Joon couldn't answer. His body shook. His mind screamed, but his eyes were locked on hers. She gave a small, enigmatic smile, then stepped away. "See you tomorrow." She left, and he stood alone in the most deafening silence he had ever known. And as Joon remained there, still trembling, only one question echoed in his mind. If she keeps going, how long until she discovers my secret? Was Hana just playing with his limits? Or was she also hiding a desire ready to be revealed? Morning broke gray, low clouds covering the sky, a cold wind seeping through the library's cracks. Joon stacked piles of books, but his mind was elsewhere. Since the night before, Hana's question pursued him. Is it desire? He still felt the echo of those words, as if they were imprinted on his skin. No matter how he tried, he couldn't erase them. When Hana walked in, she didn't look like any ordinary visitor. There was something different about her. Maybe the lighter way she moved. Maybe the gaze that didn't hide its intention. She watched him like someone leafing through an interesting book, unhurried but hungry for every page. "Good morning, Joon," she said, setting her notebook on the table. He answered with a quick nod, not daring to meet her eyes. But Hana didn't rush. She spent long minutes just writing until, suddenly, she looked up and called him. "You never told me. You like silence, don't you?" Joon hesitated. "It's easier in silence." She tilted her head, studying him. "Easier to hide." The sentence hit him squarely. He swallowed, trying to recover. "Maybe." Hana smiled and said nothing else. She simply went back to writing, as if she had gotten what she wanted. Time dragged. The rain returned, tapping against the window in a steady rhythm. Joon approached to hand her a few books that might help with her studies. When he set the volume on the table, Hana let her fingers brush his. The contact was quick, but deliberate. Joon froze. Her eyes found his, steady, undisguised. "You feel it too, don't you?" she asked softly. He drew a breath, trying to step away, but his voice failed. "Hana, I can't, or won't," she countered, with a half smile. The silence that followed was heavy, dense with tension. Joon backed up, but he could no longer deny it. Fragments of his secret were escaping in every tremor, every hesitation. That night, at home, he opened the drawer where he kept the velvet cuffs. He ran his fingers over the soft fabric and closed his eyes, imagining Hana's touch bound by that loop. Desire throbbed inside him, but fear smothered it. In the days that followed, Hana seemed to decide that playing with Joon's limits was an irresistible game. She didn't ask direct questions, but her gestures were loaded with intention. She took off her glasses slowly, as if she knew that simple act drew his attention. She held the pen between her lips longer than needed. She adjusted her hair in a slow motion, letting strands fall over her shoulders. Joon tried to hide in his work, but every detail consumed him. It wasn't just attraction. It was as if she had found the exact key to his desire. One afternoon, as they walked together toward the library exit, Hana purposely dropped a stack of papers. When Joon bent to help her, she took hold of his wrist, not strongly, but with enough firmness to stop him. "Why do you tremble whenever I touch you?" she asked, eyes fixed on him. Joon swallowed, unable to answer. She pressed lightly at his wrist, reading each reaction. "This isn't fear," she concluded, her voice soft, almost a whisper. "It's something else." He closed his eyes for an instant, feeling heat surge through his body. When he tried to pull away, she didn't let go immediately. The prolonged contact was like fire on his skin. At last, Hana released his hand slowly, but kept her gaze steady. "One day, you'll have to tell me." And she left, while he stood there, breathing deep, his wrist still burning with the memory of her touch. In that moment, Joon realized silence was no longer enough. Hana was dismantling his mask, gesture by gesture, gaze by gaze. When the secret finally slips free, will Hana pull away, or ask to see how far he can go? The night was charged. The storm fell hard, rain mixing with distant thunder. Inside the library, only the soft glow of a single lamp remained. The air felt suspended in time, as if the world had paused to witness something inevitable. Joon was closing the last books when he noticed Hana was still there. She was seated, writing slowly, but something in her posture betrayed her. She was waiting for him. "Staying late again?" he asked, trying to sound casual. She looked up, an enigmatic smile curving her lips. "Maybe. I still haven't found what I'm looking for." He swallowed. He knew she wasn't talking about books. The silence stretched. Hana closed her notebook, stood, and walked toward him. Each step sounded louder than the rain. When she stopped in front of him, she took his hand, turning it gently. Her fingers traced the pulse at his wrist, slowly, as if reading something written in his skin. "You're hiding something here," she said, low. "I can feel it." Joon stepped back, but she didn't let go. His heart hammered, his body trembled. Finally, he surrendered a sigh. "I have a secret, Hana, one that might make you look at me differently." "Then show me," she answered without hesitation. He went quiet, breathing deeply, eyes fixed on hers, fear versus desire. At last, he found the courage. Not here. Joon's apartment was simple, lit only by the warm yellow of a small lamp. Rain beat hard against the window, sound filling every empty space. Hana entered slowly, taking everything in. He walked to the dresser, hesitated for a moment, and opened the bottom drawer. From it, he took a small black case. When he opened it, the velvet gleamed softly in the dim light. Handcuffs, soft, delicate, kept like a precious secret. Hana looked at the object in silence. There was no shock in her eyes, no judgment, only curiosity. "Is this what you're hiding?" she asked, stepping closer. Joon couldn't speak. He only nodded, gaze lowered like someone confessing a crime. Hana took the cuffs in her hands, felt the velvet against her fingers, and gave a faint smile. "This isn't a prison. It's trust." The words struck him like a spark. He raised his eyes, surprised, and found in her something he had never expected. Acceptance. The silence grew denser. Hana held the cuffs carefully, as if they were fragile rather than dangerous. Then, slowly, she offered one to Joon. "Show me," she said, firm. He hesitated. "Are you sure?" "If I weren't, I wouldn't be here," she answered, looking straight into his eyes. With trembling hands, Joon brought the velvet loop to her wrist. The motion was slow, careful, almost reverent. When the clasp closed, a shiver ran through them both. Joon's heart beat so hard it seemed to echo in the room. He looked at Hana, bracing for fear. Instead, he found a soft smile and quickening breath. "Is this how you see the world?" she asked. "It's how I feel," he answered, voice low, almost a whisper. He leaned in, inch by inch, as if asking permission with every breath. Hana didn't pull back. She leaned in too, until their lips met. The kiss wasn't hesitant like the first one he had imagined. It was intense, charged with desire and something deeper, the sense that in that moment, she chose to see what no one else had. The velvet on her wrist wasn't a prison. It was a symbol of trust. When they parted, both were breathless. Hana rested her forehead against his and whispered, "If this is your world, I want to explore it with you." Joon closed his eyes, tears threatening. For the first time, he didn't feel only fear. He felt free. Was what began there true love, or just an obsession ready to consume them both? The days that followed were different. Between library aisles and quiet nights in Joon's apartment, something had changed. The secret was no longer hidden. It was part of every look, every touch, every unspoken word. Hana watched Joon more closely than ever. She noticed how he reacted to details, the way she adjusted her hair, the slow glide of her fingers across the table, even how his breath quickened when they were alone. It was as if she had learned to decipher the code of his desire. One night, sitting face to face in his room, she broke the silence. "Joon, have you always wanted this? Since when?" He looked away, uneasy. "Since I can remember, but I never had the courage to show anyone." Hana leaned in and took his hand. "It isn't wrong to feel. What would be wrong is hiding from yourself." He squeezed her fingers, eyes glossy. "And you? How far are you willing to go with me?" She drew a breath. "As far as love can bear." The silence that followed was heavy, but not empty. It was the kind that carried promises. Still, deep down, they both knew there were no easy answers. Every step forward might cross an invisible line. That night, Joon took from the drawer not only the velvet cuffs, but also a black silk blindfold. He showed it without words, waiting for her reaction. Hana looked at the object for a few seconds. Then she raised her eyes to his and nodded. "I trust you." When the silk covered her eyes, Joon's heart raced. For him, it wasn't about control. It was about being accepted, about watching someone choose to enter his world. And as he held her hand, he realized love could be there, but so could danger. The more he let himself go, the more he feared not knowing where to stop. Hana's yielding woke a part of Joon he had tried to repress for years. The simple act of blindfolding her, of feeling her breath quicken, was like diving into a deep ocean of sensation. He touched her face gently, traced the outline of her lips with his fingertips, and each reaction from her sent him into a trance. Desire grew, along with a fear. How far could he go without destroying what they had? Hana, in turn, discovered a version of herself she hadn't known. The darkness of the blindfold sharpened every other sense. The warmth of Joon's skin, the scent of the room mixed with the rain at the window, the sound of his quickened heartbeat. It felt forbidden, and at the same time, inevitable. At a certain point, Joon pulled away, unable to bear the intensity. "Hana, what if this is only obsession? What if I don't know how to love any other way?" She slowly removed the blindfold, revealing steady eyes. She came close and cupped his face in her hands. "Then let it be obsession. I want to feel it too." The kiss that followed was unlike any before. No hesitance, no mere curiosity. It was fever, surrender, urgency. The room felt too small for the fire around them. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the silence grew heavy again. Hana leaned her forehead to his and whispered, "I love you, Joon, but promise me you won't lose me inside this desire." He closed his eyes, pressing her hand to his chest. "I don't know if I can promise that." The words hung like a shadow. For the first time, love didn't seem enough to hold back the abyss opening between them. Would they be able to balance love and desire? Or were they doomed to fall into an obsession that would consume them whole? Time seemed to drag. After nights of intense surrender, Hana began to feel the weight of what they lived. It wasn't regret. It was doubt. Was their love rooted in trust, or only a reflection of a desire that didn't know how to contain itself? She began to pull away. Little by little, she avoided meeting at the library, made excuses not to go to Joon's apartment, and he, though desperate, didn't have the courage to stop her. His greatest fear had always been this, that by revealing his secret, he would lose everything. One night, leaving the library, Joon saw her on the street talking with a university colleague. There was nothing but a smile, but for him, it was enough to feel the ground vanish beneath his feet. The silence between them became deafening. At home, Joon opened the drawer where he kept the velvet cuffs. He took them in his hands and squeezed hard, as if he could wring an answer from them. Am I the one who's trapped, or is it desire that binds me to her? In that moment, for the first time, he thought of giving up. Hana, meanwhile, lay in bed staring at the ceiling with tear-brimmed eyes. She missed him. She missed the charged silences, the gestures, even the fear. But she needed to know whether what they lived was love. or whether she was losing herself in something she couldn't control. The silence screamed between them. Perhaps this was the final test. Rain fell hard that night. Hana returned to the library. As if fate drew her there, she found Joon alone, seated at the central table, head bowed, fingers spinning the velvet cuffs as if they were a verdict. When the door closed behind her, he looked up. The shock in his eyes was clear. Surprise, fear, and hope all at once. "Hana," he murmured, voice trembling. "I don't know if I can give you anything beyond this." She walked to him slowly. "What if this is exactly what I want?" Joon shut his eyes, tears threatening. "What if you regret it? What if one day you hate me for pulling you into this world?" Hana stepped closer, took the cuffs from his hands, and set them on the table. She touched his face gently. "What binds me to you isn't the velvet, it's love." He looked at her, heart racing. "So you'll stay?" "I'll stay," she answered, firm. "But only if it isn't a prison. Only if it's a choice." The silence stretched. Then Joon slowly fastened the cuffs to his own wrist and offered them to her. "Then bind me." Tears fell from Hana's eyes as she closed the velvet around his wrist, not as a symbol of domination, but of trust. The kiss that followed was deep, calm, filled with acceptance. There was no more fear or hesitation, only two hearts that finally chose to meet in the middle of silence. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside the library, there was only warmth. And so, through tears, kisses, and velvet ties, they decided love wasn't a prison. It was surrender. Would the ties that bound them be eternal, or as fragile as velvet itself? How many parts of yourself do you hide for fear of not being accepted? Joon believed his desire was a prison, but discovered that true love is born when someone chooses to stay, even in the face of our deepest secrets. And you? How many times have you refused to live something intense because you were afraid to show who you really are? If this story touched your heart, I invite you to take the next step. Because loving isn't hiding, it's choosing to be fully seen.